In this section, we will be adding some decals and color patterns to the front of our shield. Currently, 123D Design can only color entire solids. So in order to create these desired decals and patterns in front of our shield, we'll have to make thin three-dimensional solids that can be colored and stick out. In order to create these decals, we will first need to create a sketch plane and some boundaries to keep our sketch in. We will be using the Project Geometry tool to do this. Additionally, we will be using the Spline tool to create interesting curves. This tool places anchors wherever you click, and 123D Design tries to automatically connect them with a curved line. This is a very handy tool for creating organic-looking geometry. The last feature of our shield that really needs some work is the very front. These shields were almost always covered with cloth or leather, both of which were glued to the wood and tremendously increased its strength. These faces were also painted with different colors and patterns. But as you've noticed by now, 123D Design doesn't really support painting or any sort of decaling onto our parts. The way we have so far avoided this issue is by making each part a different component. We can thus paint the shield by creating thin three-dimensional shapes in the desired patterns and then paint them individually. Before I begin sketching my decals onto the shield, I'll use the Project Geometry tool to create some sketch geometry that we can use to help bound our sketches. First, I'll select the Project Geometry from the Sketch tab. I'll select the wood as the sketch plane, and then I'm going to click on certain parts to create these geometries. First, I'll click on the interior of the leather strap, and then I'll click on the circle where the wood meets the metal boss. I'll use these two circles as boundaries for my different patterns. Now I'll go ahead and draw a pattern that I've seen reoccur on a couple of my sources using the Spline tool from the Sketch tab. Once more, make sure to select which sketch you want to edit by highlighting your lines and then clicking on one. The Spline tool works by creating anchors wherever you click, and then tries to make a curved line connecting them. I'll just go ahead and make this S-curve that I've seen reoccur on a couple of my sources. The finished product will look a little bit like this. I'll just go ahead and make another line similar to our last one. Now that we have a shape, we can go ahead and extrude it. Keep in mind, we really only have to extrude it just a bit so we can paint it. I'll only extrude it about 1 millimeter. Once more, instead of copying this one part by hand and duplicating it a couple more times, I'm just going to go ahead and use the circular pattern tool and save me some time. Once more, when using the circular pattern tool, make sure you're careful about selecting your solid as the actual solid. Once again, I find it really helpful if I just zoom in and select one of the edges. I wanted 3 of them, so I will just go ahead and push enter, and voila! We haven't covered up the wood entirely yet, so let's just go ahead and extrude this donut shape that we made using the projection tool by 0.5 millimeter, just so it covers it. To color these surfaces, just open the material library and apply the desired colors. In my case, I actually found out that an ancient Viking round shield was unearthed and was apparently painted red and white, so I'll use those colors. Remember, if you can't find a color in the material selection library, just go ahead and use the color overlay option to create your own. Alright, we're just about done actually modeling our shield. If we want to view it without all the sketches on, you can go ahead and just turn the sketches off using the Show/Hide Sketch button on the right side of the screen. While we were modeling it, it was helpful to have it on that XY sketch plane. However, now that we're done with it, we might want to use it for presentations and other purposes, so we'll want to move it out of that grid. To do that, select your entire model. This could take a bit depending on its complexity, and use the Move tool under the Transform tab, and just drag it up so it's above there. Keep in mind, while I just made a Viking round shield, the same basic techniques, sketching, extruding, revolving, modifying, and coloring, can be used to make just about any artifact or object. For example, opposed to a Viking round shield, it's possible to create a Viking bearded axe from the same era by sketching and extruding the blade, adding chamfers, and creating a wooden handle. These techniques also aren't limited to Viking artifacts. For example, the Chinese qiao, or spear, is a revision upon one of humanity's most commonly used and deadly weapons. The creation of this spear was relatively straightforward, with the head just being made up of a revolution, a chamfer, and extrusion, and the handle of it being made up of 2 cylinders. Albeit some artifacts are harder to create than others, but nonetheless are possible. For example, this Roman scutum, a descendant of the tower shield, posed difficulties due to its curved geometry. Nonetheless, there are still many ways to make it. In this case, a curved portion was sliced out of a shaped solid to create a curved shield with curved edges, just like the legionnaires used in real life.